Sequels, gotta love them, right? Nowadays it feels like we get more sequels, adaptations, remakes, etc. than original stories. People don't like inviting new movies into their minds. They've established what they enjoy and they want to see it done over and over again until they hate it. I agree, it can get annoying, but what annoys me more is how this overabundance of sequels has overshadowed a lot of good sequels that have proved that, hey, maybe it's not such a bad idea to make a second movie. I've always thought sequels were kind of a goofy and interesting concept. The whole idea of taking an idea and doing it again but with a different story, sort of, I don't know, it's fun to me. I think sequels also prove how interesting certain franchises and ideas can be. Like a certain idea and world is so good and so full of potential that we're gonna make it like 5 more times. So now you're probably thinking, well, this guy clearly has something to say about sequels. What is it? Come on, spit it out. All right, calm down. I think sequels get a bad rep because obviously they can be really bad a lot of the time, but sometimes they're even better than the original. So with that being said, I'm gonna talk about what makes for a good sequel in 3, 2, 1. If a sequel is being made in the first place, that probably and definitely means it's being made because the production company can make money from it. That being said, the production company is going to throw more money into this new boy than they did the first one, and I mean, this is common sense. Why am I even saying this? The fact that production value will be increased because of technological advancements and a bigger budget is a given when making a sequel, but to make it good, the filmmaker should actually make use of that new technology. Sometimes I see a sequel and I'm just like, really? That's what we're doing with it? Jaws: The Revenge is a pretty cookie-cutter example of this. After the success of the original classic Jaws, whoever is in charge of this disaster came in and did nothing exciting, and they had $23 million more. Like, what? Same applies for animation. All these friggin' Alvin and the Chipmunks movies look the same, nothing improved in the slightest. The fur maybe gets a little bit better, but it's never to a point where I'm like, damn! Then you look at Toy Story 3 and you're like, whoa, this thing looks like a cinematic masterpiece. Not to say the original wasn't, but visually, it looks a million times better. I think a standout example would be something like Blade Runner 2049. They fully embraced the budget they had and just went all out on the production design. They basically did everything they weren't able to accomplish in the original and truly brought the viewer into that atmosphere. My point is, if the studio wants to make another movie, it's going to be an expensive one. Let's make it feel like that, okay? One of the biggest pros about making a sequel is being able to skip over establishing characters and all that junk and leaving more room for world building and story. You still have to do it to a certain extent, but the point is that this is a continuation or prequel of the movie before it, so it's assuming the viewer already has a general knowledge of the characters. Some of my favorite sequels are those where I learn a ton more about the world I was already familiar with. It's kind of the main purpose behind sequels. The audience wants more, so let's give them more. Let's really build this thing. A great example is Shrek 2. This movie is so unbelievably underrated. Think about if Shrek was only Shrek. The sequel opened up a whole idea of there being much more to this fantasy land than meets the eye. All of a sudden, I'm not just watching Shrek and Donkey, I'm watching for what they're gonna find next. I'm watching for Puss in Boots, for Pete's sake. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 did the same thing. It said, okay, we got the general stuff out of the way in the first one, so here's what's really going down. And while it was messy and it felt like a million different things happening, I was still interested and satisfied with the amount of new information I was left with. Movies like Crystal Skull feel absolutely pointless. I don't really feel like I learned anything new about Indiana Jones in this universe. Take it out and what do I lose? Shia LaBeouf. Who cares, dog? And then there's Ted 2. Remember this thing? Ted wasn't even that bad in my opinion. I thought it was pretty funny from time to time, but this thing is just on another wavelength of pointless. The plot is boring. Nothing new is introduced. More things were introduced in each scene of the original Ted than this entire movie, really. I hate it. Get it out of here. This is, in my opinion, the most important thing to remember when making a sequel. For the love of God, make it its own thing. I hate when I watch a sequel and all it ends up being is the original movie but with better animation and a slightly different plot. It always comes off absurdly lazy, like the filmmakers just wanted to play it safe and have everyone enjoy it because everyone liked the first one and they didn't want to take the risk of adding new jokes and content. This is something that scares me about The Incredibles 2. This movie has been one of my most anticipated movies for years, and the most recent trailer took away a lot of that excitement for me. Jokes from the old movie pop up, and it seems like a movie that's reliant on memories from the original. Like, Bob, we get it, you don't like the education system, please. Sure, it has an entirely original plot, but how much of a difference does that make if its voice sounds so desperately like it's trying to be like, hey, you guys like the old movie, right? Well, this is the same thing, but with better hair. Same thing happened in Finding Dory. I mean, props to Monsters University for keeping it original, but everything about this movie screams why. I think movies like 22 Jump Street are sequels to look up to. Sure, it has an incredibly similar plot to the first, but at least it's its own thing. It doesn't rely on the original, it stands alone as a movie on its own. Empire Strikes Back is another prime example. Even in a franchise like Star Wars, it stands alone. Take any scene and you can be like, boom, that's Empire. It clearly sees its place in the already established world and it works from there. It doesn't take elements from A New Hope and tries to do it again, it does its own thing. It's like a comedian. Yeah, we like the jokes from one special, but unless they're iconic, people don't like to go to live shows to watch the same jokes. They go because they enjoy the person telling them and want to see something new. There are of course a ton of exceptions. Paddington 2 is one of the best sequels I've ever seen and it follows none of these rules. And on top of that, these rules shouldn't even be taken seriously in the first place. This is just how I look at it. Sequels are exciting and have the potential to make a good thing even better, but so many filmmakers seem to approach them the wrong way, and it's worth looking at what makes good ones the way they are. Between improvement, potential, and originality, it's clear filmmakers have a lot to look into when making a sequel. All this being said, I've officially started writing the script for Robots 2.